Good morning, everyone. This is the second recorded video. I'm going to summarize for you the materials that we covered the second week. The lesson was lesson 4, the fourth lesson in unit 2, reproduction and growth of plants. So as you see here, this lesson, unit 2, module 1, lesson 4. During this lesson, we discussed the following points and we learned the following points. We identified how plants reproduce both sexually and asexually, and we recognized the factors that affect the probability of successful reproduction and growth. Also, we learned the factors that affect the growth of the plant. Not only this, but also we discussed how do plants reproduce sexually by formation of seeds and asexually. Let's revise together the main ideas for this lesson. To start with, as you know, plants are living things that they reproduce and they grow by different methods. Plants, as we talked before in animals, some animals reproduce sexually and asexually. Also plants, they reproduce sexually and asexually. Because different plants, they have different reproductive structures and different ways of reproduction. So not all plants are the same, not all of them have the same structures, and not all of them reproduce by the same way. If we start with like a classification of plants. Plants are classified into vascular plants and non-vascular plants. As you know, and as we talked before, vascular plants, they are plants with vascular tissues, xylem and phloem, that they have these tissues for transportation of water and food within the plants. And non-vascular plants, from its name, these plants, they don't have vascular tissues because they are simple and short and they are able to move water from one cell to cell by diffusion and osmosis. Here we have also, if we speak about vascular plants, they are classified into two types. The plants with vascular tissues, they are classified into two types: the seed plants and the seedless plants. The seed plants, from the name, these plants produce seeds, okay? And the seedless plants, from the name, these are plants that don't produce seeds. Instead of this, these plants produce spores, and we are going to recognize and to remember what are spores. So they don't produce seeds, they produce spores like ferns. Okay, and for seed plants, the plants that produce seeds, they are also classified into two other types. Seed plants can be flowering plants, where flowers are grown on these plants, where flowers are the reproductive parts, where seeds grow inside the flowers. And non-flowering, or we name them cone-bearing plants. These plants, they produce seeds where inside reproductive special structures called cones. So they lack flowers, but instead of flowers, they have cones where seeds are formed inside. If we speak about non-vascular plants, as we said, they lack vascular tissues and they are small like mosses. Okay, we will see mosses again and we will see flowering and non-flowering plants in details, inshallah. Now, as we started, plants reproduce sexually and asexually. Asexual reproduction in plants, it occurs when a portion of a plant develops into separate new plant. Okay, like when we spoke before about potato. Some students, and my students told me there are small buds that are growing on the surface of potato. If the conditions are like moist place. Yes, this is asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction when only one plant produces a new separate plant. But what's about sexual reproduction in plants? When we say sexual reproduction, here we mean we have sex cells. Here we mean male and female. Here we mean two plants, not only one. Okay? So when you see sexual reproduction in animals, in plants, in a human, you have to know that here there are sperm cells and egg cells. Here there is fertilization, as we took in the previous lesson. Okay, so let's see more about sexual reproduction. And as you know from before, the male reproductive cell is the sperm and the female reproductive cell is the egg. And how do plants reproduce differently? This depends on their structures they have. According to their structures, the way of reproduction will be. Now, this one is a video. Here we have, if we start with seedless plants. If we start with seedless plants, how do they reproduce? Seedless plants, they are plants again without seeds, or they don't produce seeds. The most familiar two types are ferns and mosses. As you see here, these are ferns and these are mosses. These two types of plants, they don't produce seeds and they don't grow from seeds. They produce what? Spores. What are spores? If you ask yourself what are spores, they are like tiny structures, very small, tiny structures that contain genetic material needed to grow a new fern or moss. Okay, so if we look at this picture, we can see here this structure on the back of the leaves are the parts that contain the spores. These are not the spores. These structures contain the spores. When they open, the spores are released and the spores are taken to another place in order to grow a new fern plant. Okay, so ferns and mosses are the two seedless plants. They produce spores for production. Spores then grow into new plant. Okay, so that's all about seedless plants. Now, if we speak about seed plants, what are seed plants? Seed plants are, as we said, they are plants that produce seeds by sexual reproduction. Okay, so they are classified into two types: flowerless seed plants and flowering seed plants. Flowerless seed plants, these plants, they don't have flowers. They lack flowers. Instead of flowers, they have cones. The cone is the reproductive part of the plant here. And this cone, it's the site where seeds are made. So it is the reproductive part of the plant. Okay, so we name them flowerless seed plants, or we name them non-flowering seed plants, or we name them cone-bearing plants because they produce seeds inside the cones. And what's about flowering seed plants? Flowering seed plants are plants that produce seeds in the flowers. As you see here, there are flowers, they are growing, okay, and the flowers are the reproductive part of the plant. It means it contains the reproductive cells. This is the meaning of the reproductive part of the flower. If we speak now more about flowering seed plant, okay, but don't forget that both produce seeds by sexual reproduction. Why by sexual reproduction? Because the seed is a result of sexual reproduction, is a result of like fertilization between egg and sperm. So seed is a result of sexual reproduction. All seedless plant, all seed plants, they reproduce sexually by formation of seeds. Okay. Now to speak more about the seed plants. As we said, both produce seeds by sexual reproduction, flowering and non-flowering seed plants. They have what, sex cells, both. If we speak about cone bearing plant or flowering beer plants, they both have sex cells because sexual reproduction requires sex cells, male and female cells. So here we have the male cells, or the male part is called here the pollen. Pollen grains are powdery, small parts, structures that contain sperms. Okay, so pollen grains contain sperms, which are the male cells, the male reproductive cells, and also they produce these types of plants, seed plants. They produce also male, female structures, or they have female structures that contain uh, eggs, the female reproductive cells. Now, if we speak more about flowering seed plants. Flowering seed plants, they are the plants that reproduce sexually by formation of seeds inside the flower. So the flower is the reproductive structure in the flowering plants. Okay, and as we said, it consists of reproductive parts, male reproductive part and female reproductive part. If we look at this picture, we can observe the parts or the structures of the flower. Here in this flower, we have male reproductive part. Do you see this one? The male reproductive part, here we have 4. The male reproductive part is named the stamen. Okay, and this part, it produces pollen grains. And as we said, pollen grains contain the sperms. So the male reproductive part of the flower is called the stamen. This stamen produces pollen grains that contain the sperms. Okay, so here we have, if you observe, we have 4 male parts in this flower. And what's about the female reproductive part? The female reproductive part of the flower, which is here in the middle inside, it's called the pistil or the carpel. It has 2 names, either the pistil you can say or the carpel, where eggs are formed. If we observe here, here are the eggs or the ovules inside the female reproductive part. Let's speak more about these reproductive parts of the flower. If we speak in details about the reproductive parts of the flower, we can say that the stamen, that is the male reproductive part, it's made up of parts. Okay, so if we look at the stamen, the structure of the stamen, we can observe that there are 2 parts. The first one is the anther, where pollen grains are inside, where the pollen grains are located, are made, and the filament is the second part. What's about the parts of the pistil? What's about the parts of the carpel or the female reproductive part? The pistil is made up of 3 parts. The stigma, the part that receives the pollen grains, the style, and the ovary that contains the eggs. So the ovary is the location of the eggs, is the site of the eggs. So eggs are found inside the ovary. Okay, now, so ovary contains the eggs and anther contains pollens or sperms. Not only these are the parts of the flowers. These are the reproductive parts. But what's about the other parts or the structures or common parts of the flower? If we look at this flower, or if you observe any flower, you will see the colored part, the colored parts. The colored parts of the flower are called petals. You see here the red part? Okay, these are petals. Okay, and what's about the green leaf-like structures down below the ovary? These are called sepals. And the other parts that we learned the reproductive parts, the stamen and its parts, and the pistil and its parts. These are the common flower parts that we know. One more note that you have to know is that not all flowers have both male and female reproductive parts in the same flower. This, yes, many flowers contain both male and female parts, as this one. It contains the pistil or the carpel, the female part, and also it contains the male parts that are here on both sides. But some flowers contain only male or female parts. I mean, some flowers contain only stamens. This flower, so it is a male flower that will produce only pollen grains. Other flowers contain only the pistil or the female part. So this flower is female flower only, okay? And it produces the eggs only, no pollens in this flower. But for this example, it contains both, so we name this one bisexual flower. Bisexual means it contains the two. Okay, now let's see together. Let's see how does uh, how does seed form inside the flower. What are the steps? What is the process of formation of the seed? In order to understand how do seeds form, you have to know there should be fertilization. There should be combination between the pollens and the eggs, or between the sperms from the pollen or in the pollen and the eggs. The process of transferring the pollen grains from one male part of one flower to the female part of another flower is called pollination. So pollination, when pollens from the male part or from the male flower like lands or go to the female reproductive part or to the pistil. Okay, and we watched before in the videos, we observed that pollination, it's a process through which the pollen grains they reach, or the sperms in the pollen grain reach the female part. But when pollen grains reach the female part, what happens? The pollen grains, then when they stick on the stigma, which is the opening or the upper part of the pistil, pollen grains now they like release the sperms, and the sperms go through style to reach the eggs inside the ovary. So we have here when sperms reach the ovary, when sperms fuse with the eggs in the ovary, then this process, as you know, it's the fertilization process. Okay, so they are not the same, pollination and fertilization. Pollination, when pollens go and land on the female reproductive part only. But fertilization is the process through which sperms join the eggs in order to develop a seed. This is in plants. Okay, fertilization in animals, no formation of seeds, formation of the of a zygote. Here zygote form, then a seed will grow, will develop. Okay, so let's speak more about pollination. If we look at this one shows, this picture shows pollination process. Here the orange small parts are the pollens, and they are released from the anther of the stamen. And look at this part, the stigma of the carpel. The pollens are like they reach the stigma. This is the process of pollination. And we can say that pollination can it can take place, or it can occur within the same flower if the flower contains both reproductive parts. If the flower is bisexual, we can say that pollination takes place in this flowering, in this flower. But what's about bee here? Bee, it's a pollination between two flowers uh, of the same plant. Look, this one plant contains two flowers. So pollination here, bee, takes place between two flowers of the same plant. What's about C? C, it is the transfer of pollen or pollination from the male to female part of flowers of different plants, but same kind, same species. Okay, so pollination can occur within the same flower if it has the male and the female parts. It takes place between two flowers of the same plant, and it can occur between two flowers of different plants, but they have to be with the same kind, with the same species. Okay, so this is all about pollination. It's very easy. Here is the video. You can open it and see it from the using the uploaded PowerPoint, same PowerPoint that we upload it for you on the resource documents. If we speak now about non-flowering seed plants. Non-flowering seed plants, as we said, they are also named cone-bearing plants. Cone-bearing plants, these plants, they lack flowers. Instead of flowers, they have reproductive parts called cones, where seeds are formed. Okay, so they produce seeds inside their cones by sexual reproduction also. And also here we have pollen, and here we have eggs. And as you know, pollens are produced from the male part. So here we have male cone and female cone. If we observe this one on the same tree, there are the two types of the cones, the two sex cones. The female one that is big and woody, if you look at it, this cone or these cones, they contain the eggs because they are the female cones. And the male cone, which is small and less woody, this male cone produces the pollen. Okay, and so the pollen is produced in the male cone, and the eggs are produced in the female cone, and they are located inside the female cones. Some plants like pine trees, cedar trees, and redwood, these plants are cone-bearing plants. They produce cones uh, and they produce seeds by sexual reproduction inside the cones. Okay, now how does this happen? How do seeds form here in cone-bearing plants? In cone-bearing plants, once pollen are released from the male cones, they reach the eggs in the female cones. And when they reach the eggs, fertilization will occur. They will fuse, or the sperms inside the pollen, they will fuse with the eggs inside the female cone, and then seeds develop. Okay, the seeds fall when cones open. When the seeds are ready, when the seeds are formed, then they have to be spread in order to grow into new cone-bearing plant. So they can be released either by animals when they open the cone, or by wind, or they fall by themselves. Okay, and they will regrow into new plant. So seeds, if you ask yourselves, where are the seeds in the female cones? They are here. Do you see? These are called the scales. Between the scales, seeds are formed. This is all about the corn-bearing plants. They are seed plants. They are producing sexually. We have also in these kinds of plants male and female sex cells. Inside the female cone, fertilization takes place and the seeds form. Okay, now if we speak about after formation of seeds, now Seeds are the parts that will grow into new plant, right? All of you know this. Now, how do seeds can be spread? How do seeds ensure successful reproduction? And how do they grow into new plants? How do they spread from the parent plant to the another place in order to to grow into new plant? As you know, seeds travel from one place to another place by different ways. Seeds can be dispersed by different ways. They can be dispersed by wind or by animals or by water or by human. Okay? Uh, what determines the way of dispersal? The way of dispersal depends on the structure of the seed. It depends on the characteristics of the seeds. Okay, so there are several factors that influence the way of the dispersal. The main thing that you have to know is that the characteristics of the seed determines or influences the characteristic of the seed determines or influences the way of dispersal. Let's speak now more about these ways of dispersal. If we speak about the first method or the first way of dispersal by wind, many seeds are able to be spread and to be taken to many places and many locations by wind. These seeds that can be dispersed by wind, they are characterized by that they are small and light and they are able to be taken by wind. So the seeds that are small and light, they can be carried by wind. Not only this, but also some seeds, they have specialized structures for flying. If we observe these examples, we can see the milkweeds, they have parachute-like structures that help them to fly. And dandelion also, look, they have also parachute-like structures that allow them to fly. Also the maple fruits that contain the seeds, they are with wing-like structures that are able to fly and they are able to be taken by seeds. So these characteristics or the seeds with these characteristics, they can be spread by wind. I want to add one thing for you. I forgot to mention it about the flowering seed plants. After the seeds form inside the flower, uh, they then the ovary of the flower enlarges and develops into fruit, and the seeds remains inside to be protected. This is an important idea to know. Okay, so here the ways of dispersal again, maybe by wind, by air, by wind, sorry, by animals, by water, and can be by a human. These are the ways. So the way depends on the characteristics of the seed. If the seed is light and small or have special structures for flying, these seeds can be spread by wind, like milkweeds, dandelion, and maple. Okay? The second way of dispersal is by water. Now you will ask yourself, how does water uh, spread the seeds or allow seeds to spread? Yes, some seeds, they have special structures that help them to stay float. These seeds are able to be taken by water from one place to another place. So here, as you observe, in these pictures, coconut is able to float on the surface of water. So this allows this to be taken by water from one place to another. without sinking. Water lilies, as you know, water lilies, these flowers that contain the seeds, they are able to float and to move from one place to another by water. And mangrove seeds, they are also characterized by they can float on the surface of water. So these seeds that are able to float on the surface of water, they can be taken by water from one place to another place. The third method, the third method is by animals. How do animals spread the seeds, or how do animals disperse the seeds? As you know, animals they eat fruits. Animals in the forest, for example, they eat different fruits from trees, and the fruits contain the seeds, as I mentioned. Okay, some kinds of seeds they are hard and they are not able to be digested inside the digestive system of animals. So what happens when animals eat these types of fruits? They then release them, they release the seeds with feces. They like they deposited or they remove the seeds by with the feces, with the waste, with the undigested food because they have hard seed coat, for example, and these seeds are not able to be digested. So these seeds can be spread by animals by this way. Another way also by animals how? Some seeds they have a hook-like structures or spines-like structures that allow them to attach to the body or to the fur or to the feather of the animals. So these can be also attached to the body of the animal and can be taken to different locations. And then this will allow them to grow into a new plant. Examples of seeds that can be taken or can be spread by animals are bigger ticks that have hook-like structures that can attach to fur of the animals, blackberries that are eaten by the animals, and acorn. Okay, so these are the main uh, ways can be by human. You know that we are able to bring seeds and to plant seeds and to spread the seeds. And one more thing, it can be by explosion. You have to know it. Explosion, it means a plant itself or the part of the plant that contains the seeds itself like open violently and release the seeds. Then the seeds can be grown into new plants. The main ways that we discussed are by wind, by water, and by animals. These three, it's important to know the characteristics for each one, and it's important to know the examples for each one. Okay, now the last part of the lesson, the last part of the lesson, it's about the effect or about the factors that affect the growth of the plants. You know, not all plants grow by the same way. Not all plants are able to grow in a correct way and in a normal way. This is controlled by environmental factors and by genetic factors. So the growth of the plants is controlled by these two different factors. If we start with environmental factors, as you know, light is an environmental factor that affects the growth of the plants. Light is very important for plants in order to grow well, in order to make their food, in order to make successful photosynthesis. Not only light, but the temperature also affects the growth of the plants. You know, if the temperature is very high, this affects. If the temperature is very low, this will affect the speed of the growth. Humidity and water also are other factors that affect the growth of the plants. These factors, these external environmental factors, they are like stimuli in the environment that affect the plant, that affect the growth of the plant. Now, as we took before, all living things, they respond to stimuli, and plants are living things that are able to respond. They respond to these stimuli we mentioned. How do they respond? First thing that you have to know that we name the plant's response tropism. Tropism is the plant's response toward or away from the stimulus. Okay, so when a plant like receive external environmental stimuli like light, like water, like temperature, like gravity, these all allow or cause the plant to respond. The response of the plant toward or away the stimulus is called tropism. Okay, now different stimuli cause different responses, right? So, like response to light is different than response to water. So there are many different types of tropism. These type these types include phototropism. From the name, photo means light, is the response of the plant toward light. Gravitropism is the response of the plant toward or away gravity. So here we have the name like shows the stimulus and the response. So gravitropism means response to gravity. Thigmotropism, it's a kind of a tropism where plants respond to touch, and we're going to see this type. Chemotropism is the response to chemicals, and hydrotropism is a type of a tropism where plants like respond to water. Let's see together what do we mean by these types of tropism. Here, like the first one, the first picture shows the three main types that we are going to discuss. The phototropism is the response toward light. Gravitropism is the response toward or away gravity. Thigmotropism is the growth of the plant in response to touch. If we start with phototropism, as we said, phototropism is the plant's growth in response to light, because photo means light. If we speak about phototropism, as you observe in these two pictures, we can see that the plant is bending toward the light, is responding. The plant is responding to light. So here, now, how do plants know that this is the direction of light? Plants contain sensing chemicals that help them to detect the direction of light. So that's why where is the light, the plant will grow toward it. So in this one also, it shows how plants can respond to light. Look here, the opening and the direction of light is upward, so the plant is growing upward. In the second one, the opening or the direction of light is on the side, the plant is bending toward the direction of light. So this response or this growth toward light is called what? It is the phototropism. Okay, now here, thigmotropism, the second type of a tropism. The second type of a tropism, it's the thigmotropism, is the plant's growth in response to touch. How do plants respond to touch? In the first example, as you see here, this plant, when it touches the surface, it's growing on it, or it grows, or it grew on it. So this one is a thigmotropism, because the plant is responding to a surface or to an object. When it touches this object, it starts growing on it for support, like cucumber plants and tomato plants. Another example of thigmotropism is the mimosa plant that is very sensitive to touch. When we touch it, or when it touches any object, it closes directly, as you see here. So this is a response to touch. Also, one example that you already know, the Venus flytrap plant that responses to touch by insects. When insects come to it, when insects touch it, it closes on it. It closes on the insect directly. This is also type of thigmotropism. Okay, now what is gravitropism? Gravitropism, it's the plant's growth in response to gravity. How do plants respond to gravity? As you know, gravity is a force on the earth that pulls us down, right? So, also plants are affected by this stimulus. Gravity is an external stimulus in the environment. Okay? How do plants respond to this stimulus? As you know, roots, they are growing downward. As you know, roots normally grow downward because they are pulled by force of gravity. Roots grow toward the gravity. Okay, so they have, like we name it, positive gravitropism with the direction of gravity, with the same direction, because as you know, gravity is what is downward. The direction of the force of gravity is downward. Now, but what's about the shoot or the stem, the upper part? Does it respond to a gravity as the same as roots or with the same direction of gravity? No. The stem, it responds to a gravity oppositely, on the opposite direction. Okay, so stems, like they have negative gravitropism in the opposite direction. They grow in the opposite direction of gravity. So they are growing, as you know, upward, opposite to the direction of gravity. So we can say about them, they have negative gravitropism. Let's see more about the gravitropism, like a small observation here. If we see this potted plant before it falls over, it is growing normally. Roots are growing downward with the same direction of gravity. They have positive gravitropism, and the shoot is growing upward, which is what negative gravitropism. What happens when the pot plant falls over? When pot plants falls over, roots will not keep growing in a straight line, no, or in a straight way. No, they have to respond to gravity. They, as you see, they are bending downward in the or with the same direction of gravity. This is respond to gravity. What's about the shoot? Does it growing or is it growing? It does it keep growing in a straight way? No, the shoot, as you are observing, it's bending and growing upward, not keep growing straight. Why? Because the shoot has the negative gravitropism, uh, by which it bends and grow upward. It grows upward. Okay, that's all about the gravitropism. Now, the last part of the lesson is about what are genetic factors, or how do genetic factors affect the growth of the plants. As you know, plants are living things and they have genetic material. The genetic material of the new plant, it's from the parents' plants. Okay, because during sexual reproduction, when we have two parent plants, genetic material from both plants is carried to the offspring or to the new plant. Okay, so genetic factors affect how plants grow. What does this mean? This means that the plants, they inherit traits from their parents. Okay, such as the color of the flower, where on the plants the flowers will bloom. All these characteristics are inherited. They are inherited from parents' plants. Okay, so these characteristics, they are inherited or they pass from the parents' plants to offspring. So plants also pass on traits to their offspring. What are these traits? These traits like include the characteristics about the growth of the plant, because genetic factors affect the growth of the plant, like the flower color and the shape of the plant, and also the leaf shape. All these are inherited, and plant height. Okay, so these are factors, or these are characteristics and the traits that are inherited genetically from the parents' plants. Okay, so not only environmental external factors affect the growth of the plant, no, also genetic factors affect the growth of the plant. So this is like a short summary about this part. Internal factors or genetic internal factors affect the growth of the plants, and the external environmental factors like light, water, gravity, uh, humidity, all these are external factors that affect the growth of the plant. Okay, that was what we learned during week 2. I hope everything is clear. Thank you for listening. Study well, stay at home, and stay healthy. Thank you. Thank you for listening.